It started with a bag. Simple as that. I just stepped out of the shower, still dripping and reaching for a towel when Ashley popped into the doorway, brushing her hair back like she hadn't been standing outside for the last few minutes. "Hey," she said too brightly. "You didn't take the gray travel bag with you this week, right?" I froze for a second. It wasn't the question itself. I mean, yeah, we've both got a few bags, but the way she said it. Like she'd practiced. Like she was trying to hit a note that sounded light but landed hollow. I looked at her through the steam still rising from the tiles. "Which one?" I asked, stalling. "The duffel." She gave a vague little shrug, her fingers still twisting in her wet hair. "Yeah, the one you usually use when you go to Denver." "I haven't touched it," I said, keeping my tone even. "Oh. Weird. I thought I saw it in the hallway earlier, but maybe I'm just losing it." She gave a quick, dismissive laugh and glanced away, like that was the end of it, then disappeared down the hall. I kept drying off, but something about her face, the delay before answering, that weird flick of her eyes to the left, hung in my mind like a warning flag. Ashley didn't usually notice my luggage. In fact, half the time she forgot I was even leaving town until I was backing out of the driveway. For her to suddenly be asking about a specific bag? Yeah. Something wasn't right. I pulled on some clothes, quietly padded down the hallway and stopped just before the guest room. The door was mostly closed, but not latched. Through the sliver of space, I could hear the soft creak of the bed frame. A few seconds later, she emerged, quick footsteps, a casual stretch, no sign that she knew I was standing silently just out of view. She gave me a short smile and said, "I'm gonna take a quick call, okay?" Then walked toward the backyard, phone already in hand. The moment the door clicked shut behind her, I stepped into the guest room. She'd left the bed looking just a little off. Ashley always fluffed the pillows, smoothed the blankets, lined things up like we were always expecting company. But now, the far pillow looked disturbed. Not in a rumpled way, but like something had been tucked underneath, then hastily adjusted. My gut tightened. I crossed the room and pressed my fingers into the center of the pillow. I felt it immediately. A hard, solid shape, too small to be a book, too heavy for makeup or jewelry. I lifted the pillow. There they were. 2 men's wristwatches, side by side, like they were waiting to be claimed. One had a thick black ceramic strap, minimalist face, silver trim. The other was all steel, brushed, sharp, gleaming. Both had that unmistakable newness to them, clean, polished, no scratches. Watches that hadn't seen much life yet. But here's the thing, I didn't recognize them. Not even a little. And I knew every watch I owned. I wasn't some obsessive collector, but I had a few gifts, souvenirs, one that Ashley gave me for our 5th anniversary that had a cracked leather strap I never fixed. These weren't mine. And more importantly, they didn't belong to anyone I knew. I sat on the edge of the bed, watches in my hand, and just stared at them. This wasn't the kind of mistake Ashley made. She was careful. Deliberate. Meticulous even. If she meant for me to find these, she would have presented them differently, maybe left them on the kitchen counter with a story, a receipt. But hiding them under a guest pillow? No. She didn't want me to see them. At least not yet. I placed them carefully on the bookshelf that lined the far wall, right next to her old college textbooks, a framed photo of us from Lake Tahoe, and a dusty copy of How to Win Friends and Influence People that neither of us ever finished. They sat there like little bombs. Waiting. Ashley came back inside a few minutes later, laughing at something someone had said over the phone. She looked at me like nothing had happened. "You good?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "Just looking for something." "Oh," she tilted her head. "Need help?" "Nah," I said. "I've got it." That was the end of the exchange. On the surface, anyway. Later that evening, while we were watching TV, some cooking show she half paid attention to while scrolling Instagram, I brought up the watches. Not directly, but in a roundabout way. "Hey," I said during a commercial break. "I found some watches in the guest room today." She blinked too slowly. "Watches?" "Yeah. Under the pillow." "Oh," she said quickly. "Those are my brother's. He left them here last time he visited." That's when I knew. She was lying. Her brother wears one of those cheap plastic digital things that lights up in neon blue and beeps when you set the alarm. He's the type who'd lose a Rolex within the hour. These were nothing like that. I didn't press her. Didn't call her out. I just nodded and said, okay, then returned to the screen. But my brain was already turning hard. If she was willing to lie over something so specific, so easy to disprove, what else was she covering up? The watches sat there on the shelf the rest of the night, quietly shining beneath the lamplight, catching my eye every time I glanced toward the bookshelf. I slept restlessly that night, her body beside me, the room quiet except for the hum of the ceiling fan, but my mind wouldn't shut off. The watches. The question about the bag. The quick call. The strange laugh. All of it layered into something I hadn't let myself admit yet. I didn't know who I was really sharing my bed with anymore. That night I didn't sleep. Not really. I drifted in and out. Light. Restless. Like my body couldn't fully relax beside her anymore. Ashley slept curled up toward the edge of the bed, her back turned to me. She used to roll over and rest her head on my chest, even in her sleep. Now she treated the king-size mattress like a border wall. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the faint tick of the hallway clock, my mind spiraling through the last few months. 100 little moments resurfaced. Things I had dismissed, rationalized, or chalked up to stress. But now they lined up like dominoes, ready to collapse. First were the text messages. She used to leave her phone face up on the coffee table without a second thought. Lately, it was always face down, screen dark, notifications silenced. Sometimes it buzzed after midnight, and she'd grab it like it was some kind of emergency, holding it close, shielding the screen from my view. When I'd ask, she'd shrug. Tammy sent me a meme, or work stuff. It's deadline week. But the tone was always too clipped, too rehearsed. Once or twice I noticed a smirk flicker across her face, vanishing the second she saw me watching. Then there were the work trips. She used to dread them. She'd call me from airport lounges complaining about flight delays and hotel breakfasts. Now, she booked them herself and seemed genuinely excited to go. She'd pack days in advance, picking outfits that didn't look like something you'd wear to a client meeting. Heels instead of flats, dresses instead of slacks, new lingerie tags in the trash. I'd found a curling iron I'd never seen before in her suitcase, still in its packaging. She stopped asking if I wanted to drive her to the airport. And it wasn't just the trips. Everything had changed. Her wardrobe had upgraded. Out of nowhere, she started dressing like she was on her way to an influencer shoot. Hair done every day, full makeup for quick runs to the grocery store, new perfume that wasn't the scent I'd bought her for our anniversary. I remember sniffing the collar of one of her coats one night when she tossed it on the bed. It was floral, powdery, and expensive smelling. Not hers, not ours. She even changed how she spoke. New slang crept into her vocabulary, words she never used before. And she started calling me babe less often. Then not at all. It wasn't just emotional. It was physical, too. Or rather, it wasn't anymore. We stopped touching. No spontaneous hugs. No goodnight kisses. No casual hand grazing mine at the dinner table. The silence between us stretched longer each evening, until it felt like we lived in two separate spheres connected only by shared utilities. When I reached for her, which I did, out of habit, out of love, out of desperate confusion, she'd flinch, or claim she was tired, or just not feeling it tonight. And at first I believed her. We'd been together long enough to know these phases happened. But the phase didn't end. It hardened, became a wall. Her phone became the new partner in bed, cradled close to her chest when she slept, clutched in her hand like a secret. Once, I reached for it to check the time while mine was charging. She **T up like I'd tried to read her diary, demanding why I needed her phone for that. I told myself not to pry. That suspicion would only make things worse. But the truth is, she had already pried us open from the inside. And then came the moment that hit me the hardest, the photos, or rather, the lack of them. One morning, I tried tagging her in an old photo from a trip to Big Sur, a goofy selfie we'd taken at that overlook with the waterfall. I couldn't find her account. At first I thought she'd deactivated it. But no, I tried searching from a different account, and there she was, still posting. Just not where I could see it. I'd been blocked, not unfollowed, not muted, blocked. I stared at the screen for a full minute, my coffee growing cold in my hand. It was like being erased without warning. She hadn't said a word about it, just cut me out. I made a new account that night. Nothing elaborate, just a burner with no friends or identifying markers. It was petty, I know, but I needed to see. I needed to understand what was happening when I wasn't in the room. What I found made my stomach turn. Her entire feed had changed. Gone were the shared photos of us, hiking, dinners, beach trips. In their place were solo sh*ts, perfectly lit selfies, mirror poses in hotel rooms I didn't recognize. Her captions were cryptic, vague quotes about growth, secrets, starting over. And the comments. Oh God, the comments. They were filled with fire emojis, heart eyes, and names I didn't recognize. A few were obviously friends or at least enablers. But some were men. Flirty men. Men who weren't me. She replied to those comments. Smiling emojis. Winks. Inside jokes. None of them mentioned me. Not once. I should have confronted her then. I should have slammed the laptop shut, walked into the living room, and asked her point-blank what the hell was going on. But I didn't. I froze. Because if I asked and she told me the truth, then everything would be real. The shape of our life would change, and the last illusion, the only thing keeping the dam from breaking, would be gone. So instead, I watched her from across the dinner table while she scrolled through that same phone, smiling at something I couldn't see. I forced a smile back, nodded at whatever small talk she made, and said I was turning in early. She barely looked up. That night, I lay awake again. Our room dark except for the faint glow of her screen lighting up her face. Her fingers moved quickly, typing something, erasing it, typing again. I turned away and stared at the wall. The pattern wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was a blueprint. The next morning I woke before the sun. Not because of some alarm or early meeting, I just couldn't sleep anymore. I lay there in the stillness, staring at the faint pattern of light on the ceiling, and felt like something inside me had quietly snapped in the night. Not in anger. Not in grief. Just done. Ashley was still asleep beside me. Peaceful, almost childlike. Her breathing was slow and rhythmic, one hand curled against her cheek. It struck me, not for the first time, how much of a stranger she looked like now. I used to know every nuance of her sleeping face. Now it felt like watching someone else's wife. I got up without making a sound and padded downstairs. The kitchen was cold. Too cold for June. I didn't bother with coffee. I walked straight to the hall closet and pulled out a box we hadn't touched in years, old electronics, mostly. Dead phones, tangled cords, ancient chargers. And tucked beneath them, exactly where I remembered, was the dusty white tablet we used to share. It had once been our road trip tablet, loaded with movies, recipes, playlists, vacation maps. At some point, Ashley stopped using it. Said it was too slow. I hadn't touched it in ages either, but I remembered something she'd forgotten. We never disconnected it from the cloud. I charged it at the kitchen island, waiting for the screen to flicker back to life. It took a few tries. Battery was toast. But eventually, the home screen blinked on, and I sat down, bracing myself. The photos started syncing immediately. Hundreds of them. First came the harmless ones, her desk, lunch pics, some boring selfies. But I wasn't looking for those. I went straight to the messaging apps. The usual suspects were there. Facebook, Instagram, messages. But one icon stood out, a secondary app she'd installed at some point. A name I didn't recognize. When I tapped it open, I almost dropped the tablet. There they were. Hundreds of messages in a thread with someone named Brendan. Just Brendan. No last name. No profile picture. The first few messages were surface level, casual jokes, funny memes, talk about bad weather, and weekend plans. But it didn't take long for the tone to shift. One scroll down and I found phrases like, I miss waking up next to you. Last night was perfect. Even better than Denver. He's still clueless. I blinked. My heart pounded so loud I thought it might shake the walls. My fingers hovered above the screen and then I kept scrolling. There were photos. Dozens. Some of hotel rooms. Some of their feet tangled together on crisp white sheets. Some selfies of Ashley in outfits I'd never seen before. But the one that hit me hardest was taken in our bedroom. The angle was unmistakable. The curtains. The headboard. The nightstand with my watch on it. And there, on the edge of the frame, was a man's hand in her hair. Wearing the black ceramic watch I'd found under the guest room pillow. I sat back, cold to my core. I'd known, or at least feared, something was wrong. But this was different. This wasn't speculation. This was a punch in the throat. A time-stamped, GPS-tagged betrayal. There was another message under that photo. Can't stop thinking about that night. Still smells like you in here. I put the tablet down and stepped away. My knees felt shaky. I needed air, but the thought of going outside, of seeing the sun and pretending the world was still normal, felt laughable. Instead, I leaned on the counter and stared at the floor. So this was it. Brendan. A man I'd never heard of, never met, who had walked into my home, laid on my sheets, touched my wife, and laughed about it in texts. I don't remember how long I stood there. Eventually, I picked the tablet back up and took screenshots of everything. The full chat thread, every photo, the metadata. I zipped it into an encrypted file, emailed it to myself, then to a separate backup email I rarely used. By the time Ashley wandered downstairs in her robe, rubbing her eyes and yawning like it was any other day, I had already transferred the files to a flash drive and locked it in my car's glove box. She kissed my cheek, said something about picking up oat milk later. I nodded, and for the first time, I think I understood what true restraint felt like. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the tablet at the wall. I didn't call her names or demand answers. I just watched her move through the kitchen, pour her coffee, and step back upstairs like none of it had happened. But something had changed. In me. All that swirling doubt, the anxiety, the questions? Gone. They'd been replaced by something clean. Cold. Still. Clarity. I knew now that I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid or controlling or insecure. I'd been loyal to a fault, patient to a breaking point. And she'd used that against me. I started noticing smaller details that day. Things I hadn't connected before. Like how she always took longer showers when she came back from client lunches. How the trash can in the guest bathroom had more makeup wipes than usual. How she kept a small, second toiletry bag in her car for yoga, she once said. We both knew she hadn't been to yoga in months. It all fit now. The watches. The hotel trips. The sudden urgency in her work dinners. The new passwords on her laptop. The Bluetooth device that popped up on our car radio one day, Brendan's iPhone, which she dismissed as a neighbor's. Piece by piece, it all slotted into place. I went back to the messages later that evening, pretending to browse my phone while Ashley watched Netflix on the couch. She laughed at something on screen while I read more of her betrayal inches away from her. Brendan wasn't just some fling. He knew our schedule. Knew when I was out of town. Knew when the house would be empty. There were messages referencing my business trips by name, like, "He's in Dallas until Friday, we've got the place to ourselves. He's staying at that airport Marriott again." I double-checked his itinerary. It was surgical. Coordinated. Personal. I started making a list in my head at first, then on paper. Dates. Times. Locations. Anything that could be cross-referenced. I printed some of the most damning photos and tucked them into a folder I labeled with a fake financial company name in case she found it. By the end of the day, I had a case file. That night, Ashley crawled into bed beside me, curled up against my back, and whispered, "Love you." And for the first time since we'd met, I said nothing. I didn't confront her. Not that day. Not the next. Not even when she forgot to log out of the app and I watched her send Brendan a photo of herself in the mirror, the same dress she wore to her strategy meeting. I waited. I documented. And when I was ready, I became someone else entirely. Not the man who begged her to come back to bed or the husband who once left flowers in her car because she'd had a bad week. I became quiet, strategic, calculating, and she never saw it coming. First, I made copies. Of everything. *TS weren't enough. I exported the chat threads, photos, timestamps, even her phone's GPS trail using the synced data from that old tablet. I downloaded the metadata and highlighted it on printouts. The texts alone could have burned our house down, but I wanted structure. A trail. Not just betrayal, but chronology. Each file was encrypted and stored 3 different ways: cloud, flash drive, and physical hard copy in a sealed envelope hidden inside an old shoebox labeled tax receipts. If she ever did get suspicious, I'd look like a man digging for W-2s. I had the evidence. What I needed now was leverage. So I contacted my attorney. Her name was Maya, blunt, brilliant, and borderline terrifying in court. We'd worked together before on a small consulting case. I sent her a message that simply read, "Time-sensitive legal inquiry. Spousal misconduct. Need discretion." She called me 2 hours later. When I laid it all out, she didn't say much at first. Just listened, occasionally murmuring, or asking for dates and times. When I told her I had physical proof of emotional and physical infidelity, her tone shifted. "Does she know you know?" "No." "Good," Maya said. "Don't tell her." "Not yet. This gives us the high ground." Then we went to work. Maya asked about the prenup, and that's when the pieces started aligning. The prenup was Ashley's idea. Back when we first got engaged. She called it balance at the time. Said she didn't want either of us to feel trapped. Her parents' divorce had been messy, and she didn't want us to become like them. Ironically, it was that same prenup that became my shield. Clause 12. In the event of extramarital emotional misconduct as defined by the documentation of sustained inappropriate communications, all claims to shared marital assets, except for the designated personal property, are forfeited. Ashley had insisted we include it as a formality. Now, it was the keystone of everything. Maya drew up a preliminary financial freeze, targeting our joint accounts. I rerouted my direct deposits to a new bank and locked down my credit. Our shared savings, most of which I had contributed to, was placed in escrow pending arbitration. Her access? Disabled. Next came the cards. We had one shared Amex that I paid off monthly. She used it for gas, groceries, Target runs, and apparently at least 2 hotel suites with Brendan. I canceled the card and requested a new one in my name only. Then came the insurance. Life, home, car, anywhere her name appeared as a beneficiary or co-owner, I had it reviewed. Anywhere I had discretion, she was removed. She didn't notice at first. Or if she did, she thought it was a glitch. I watched her struggle with the Amex app one evening, tapping her screen and frowning. Network issue? I asked casually. Must be. She forgot about it 30 seconds later. But the real move, the one she wouldn't understand until it was too late, involved a cabin. Years ago, Ashley called it a waste of inheritance. A beat-up place in Oklahoma I inherited from an uncle. She hated the idea of it, the bugs, the creaky porch, the drive. She refused to even visit. But what she never realized was that the zoning had changed 2 years ago, and commercial development had moved in fast. What used to be worthless brushland was now prime property. And I'd had it quietly reclassified under a private trust, shielded from marital holdings. She thought it was just a rusty cabin. What it actually was the future site of a medical park already under contract with a buyer. But that wasn't even the best part. The best part, the one that made Maya pause and whistle through her teeth, was Tammy, Ashley's best friend since college. Maid of honor at our wedding. Brunch every other Sunday, matching tattoos, you name it. Tammy was also an executive at a mid-sized logistics company, one that had been quietly bleeding talent for over a year. And I, thanks to a small tech consulting gig turned board referral, had just acquired majority ownership of it. Ashley had no idea. Not about the acquisition. Not about the silent board vote. Not about the fact that, as of that very week, I was now her best friend's boss. I didn't buy the company out of spite. Honestly, the move had been in play long before the affair. But when Maya found out and explained what it meant in terms of Ashley's social circle, her support system, it became the most elegant piece of the whole structure. I didn't have to say a word. I just had to wait. The next morning, Ashley joked about Tammy's drama at work while making coffee. I smiled. Corporate life's a jungle, I said. She laughed, thinking I was making small talk. I wasn't. It started at a party. One of those boutique social things Tammy liked to host. Not quite casual, not fully formal. Picture string lights, overpriced finger foods, curated playlists labeled Chill Luxe, and hand-poured candles that smelled like pine mixed with regret. Ashley loved them. Said they made her feel polished. Said it was nice to be around people who got it. I went with her, of course. I had to see it for myself. By that point, Tammy still didn't know. None of them did. The transfer of board control had gone through 2 days earlier. The announcement was scheduled for Monday. But for now, everyone at that party still thought of me as Ashley's husband. The guy who used to do app development but dropped into rideshare stuff. How Ashley framed it. Like I'd stepped off a cliff professionally and hadn't landed. And that's exactly how she introduced me. Like I was her side character. This is Blake, she said to a group of people I barely recognized. He's doing that freelance thing right now, between projects. The way she said freelance made it sound like I was begging for Wi-Fi behind a coffee shop. They laughed politely, offered small smiles. One of the guys, some marketing VP from Phoenix, patted my shoulder like he was congratulating a barista on finishing a shift. Ashley smiled, proud of herself. Polished. It was a slow burn from there. I stayed close enough to listen but far enough not to seem interested. Ashley floated around like she was hosting, laughing too loud, holding court with people she barely knew. I caught bits of it, stories about working late and how exhausting leadership is, and some of us still have ambition. Then she said it, loud enough that even the hum of wine glasses and background jazz couldn't drown it out. Blake's trying, she said with a laugh, but it's hard when you peak early. Right, babe? Everyone chuckled. Even Tammy, who caught my eye briefly, then looked away. I nodded slowly, then excused myself to the backyard under the guise of taking a call. No one stopped me. The irony? The call was real. It was Maya. Just finalized it, she said. You're officially majority partner. Board's updating the paperwork Monday. Her friend Tammy's name is already on the HR schedule. I stared at the string lights flickering on the patio railing. Give it a day, I said. Let it settle. Understood. The next day, I went back to the office for the first time in weeks. The real one. Not the co-working space Ashley thought I floated in and out of. The one with frosted glass doors and a view of the city skyline. My name was on the building now, small, subtle, but there. My assistant handed me the board folder. Inside was the final vote. The HR packet. The company org chart with my name printed at the top and Tammy's marked for termination. I signed. At exactly 11:03 a.m., Tammy received a sealed email from Human Resources. The subject line was cold, organizational update. Inside, a formal termination letter citing breach of internal protocol and non-disclosure violations related to third-party partnerships. The details weren't false. She had, in fact, disclosed pending projects to people outside the company. Most of them Ashley. Most of them in writing. Ashley had always bragged about how tight she and Tammy were. How Tammy would cover for her, validate her excuses, play buffer when needed. What Ashley didn't know, what she never thought to consider, was how far that loyalty would stretch when her friend's salary and reputation were suddenly on the line. It didn't stretch far. Tammy didn't text Ashley. Didn't return calls. Didn't like her next post. Instead, she vanished from Ashley's digital orbit like smoke in a windstorm. Ashley noticed. But not right away. She spent the weekend complaining about radio silence and how Tammy was being dramatic. By Monday, her tone shifted. She's not answering, she muttered over breakfast, her thumb tapping her phone. I mean, she literally hearts everything I post. Now nothing. I shrugged. Maybe she's busy. Ashley frowned. I think something's wrong. She was right. Tammy's LinkedIn profile was updated later that day, her job title quietly changed to consultant with no company listed. That same afternoon, Ashley posted one of her classic mirror selfies, cropped blazer, glass of wine, captioned real ones ride for real ones. The comments were split. Some gassed her up. Some were oddly quiet. One just said, "You okay?" But none from Tammy. And that silence hit Ashley harder than any insult. By Tuesday, the shift was visible. Her energy dipped. She stopped taking extra time with her makeup. Skipped her nightly skincare routine. Left her phone face up by accident once. The notifications were dry. Her laugh came less easily. By Wednesday, she was deep in a social spiral. She kept refreshing old threads. Tried reaching out to her circle. Even texted my sister, who politely ignored it. And through all of it, I said nothing. I just watched. She never brought up the watches again. Or the bag. Or the guest room. I think she convinced herself I had either forgotten or forgiven. But mostly, I think she stopped thinking about me entirely. The real me anyway. By Thursday, she cracked. It happened in the kitchen, late at night. She poured a glass of wine, took a sip, then set it down too hard on the counter. Something's off, she said. I looked up from my laptop. What do you mean? With everyone, she said, waving her hand like she was brushing away smoke. Tammy's gone. Liz barely texts back. My manager keeps ghosting me. Even you've been weird. I closed my laptop slowly. Weird how? She hesitated. Just distant. I tilted my head. You think maybe people are reacting to something you did? Her eyes narrowed, but only for a second. I haven't done anything wrong, she said quietly. I nodded once. Okay. She waited for more. I gave her nothing. She finished the wine in silence. That night, she didn't crawl into bed beside me. She stayed up, probably pacing the hallway, trying to text her way back into the world she'd built like a tower of cards. She didn't know the wind had already come and gone. And in the morning, she would wake up and realize the fall had already started. Ashley came home 2 days later to a silence she didn't expect. Her key didn't work. She tried again harder, like that might change something. Then she saw the taped envelope on the door. Inside, official notice of her removal from the deed, revocation of access rights, and a list of updated passwords she no longer owned. A cardboard box set neatly on the porch, her belongings carefully packed. On top sat a folder, printed messages, a time-stamped photo of Brendan's hand in her hair, and the prenup clause she'd forgotten. She circled to the back gate. Locked. Cameras followed her steps. Her phone buzzed, not with sympathy but with a security notification. You've been removed from home control. Even the thermostat rejected her. Ashley stood there, stunned, not screaming, not crying. Just trying to understand when, exactly, she stopped being welcome in her own story. Monday came, and with it a new kind of reckoning. At work, Ashley was summoned to HR. No warning. No context. Just a sealed envelope and a tight-lipped escort. Inside, an ethics review notice triggered by a third-party compliance report. That third party? Me. The report included flagged reimbursements, suspicious travel logs, misuse of company resources. All traced, documented, and matched with her own calendar. Brendan had booked 2 strategy sessions under her login. By Wednesday, her badge didn't scan. Her inbox was gone. Her name disappeared from the directory. No announcement. No dramatic scene. Just absence. While she sat at home, locked out of more than just a house, I stood by the window of my new office, the top floor of the very building where she once claimed control. And now? It was my name on the door. Hers, just a memory.